Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to the world's most amazing podcast these days, from entry level to the C-suite. I'm excited to share with you just really some remarkable guests who attribute much of their career success, whether they've had challenges, and of course we all have, and certainly their successes, to intentionality, to focus, to making deliberate decisions and being mindful of their behavior and how they engage and interact with others, and just the overall, back to that word, commitment that they've put forth as it relates to their overall career journey. I'm excited about today's guest. I've known him for quite some time and admired him and his, I want to use the word fervor, that he exercises in everything that he does, and certainly exercises of a level of passion that has served and benefited so many people. He has traversed banking and finance and the philanthropy world. I could go on and on about him, but I want you to get to know a little bit more about this amazing man. He is none other than Mr. Daryl Graham. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Dr. Wendy Wilson. I am doing fantastic. Thank you. How about you?
I'm good. Cannot complain. What is that? I think the last day of June. Month is, or not month, but the year is flying by. Thank you for joining me today. Share with the viewers a little bit about your background. You have footprints in a few different places, and you've done very well. So give a little backstory for us.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Daryl Graham, Senior Vice President here at Strata Education Foundation. I have been with the foundation for about 9 years or so and focused on helping to create pathways through post-secondary education to opportunity. And we at Strata are helping to do that in many of the different focus areas and key initiatives that we're driving from our North Star, helping to make it affordable, helping provide better work-based learning opportunities through internships, and certainly helping students have great quality coaching and career advising experiences along the way. And so my journey started, at Morgan State University. I'm an alum of an HBCU located in Baltimore, Maryland, for those who don't know Morgan State University. My degree is in accounting, and I ended up leaving there and going to work for KPMG. And so I spent the early part of my career focused on how I could become the best accountant that I could be. But along that journey, there are some things that came up that I saw that helped me to begin to see more than just the field of accounting. I began to see a lot of other things. And so I began to explore a great deal, but I never would have been able to do that had I not gone the direction that I went into accounting. It exposed me to so many different things, so many different avenues, that it gave me some pathways, multiple pathways that I could take in order to think about what my career could be as I move forward. And so as a young, eager student from Baltimore, Maryland, trying to figure out life, I found my way into a wonderful career starting in accounting, and it transcended from accounting, out of accounting, and into more of a relationship management type of roles, which transcended into finally getting into philanthropy directly. And I've spent more of my career now, 21 years in philanthropy versus in my accounting and finance career. So a 35-year career where the majority of it's been spent there. But the foundations of it started with accounting and finance. And it's something that I would never do differently.
Very good. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I don't know if I've shared this story before, but I thought I wanted to be an accountant too. When I got to intermediate accounting, and I was like, yeah, this is not my ministry. This is not.
No, you hadn't shared that before. It's interesting. A lot of people thought about doing it and they got into it like, whoa, this is a bit much.
It is. It requires a level of discipline that I'm still trying to master in many ways. So, but you were very successful in that. And then what I heard you kind of allude to is really just had no idea that you would end up in the philanthropy space. You know that I train extensively on the topic of executive presence and just those core pillars that I believe everyone should possess, whether, of course, not to the title of the podcast, whether they're entry level or whether they're C suite. There are some behaviors that one needs to employ or exercise, and those decisions that allow them to be successful. You certainly have done that, which, of course, has, I'm sure, attributed to your success in accounting and now in the philanthropy world. Out of that, and we'll get specifically into the questions in just a moment, tell me, and I want to focus on with you, and I've been doing this with a lot of my male guests as it relates to one of the pillars, of course, is one's aesthetic, their professional aesthetic, how they, it's not just what you wear, but how you present yourself and how that impacts your ability to provide the service or the product that your employer, in this particular case, Strata, request of you. Could you share with the viewers why you value a professional aesthetic, what that means to you?
It's a great question. This started when I was at KPMG because, the one thing that being a Black man and being a professional Black man, there are some things that there are times that we kind of take for granted. And it is, sort of the casual wear. If you're doing that, sometimes people might not look at you in those professional settings in the same way. And so I had a great mentor at KPMG. There's a great deal of training that occurs and development as a part of your career pathway there. From the time you get there, you go into 2 weeks of training, which includes etiquette, showing up, your presence, how you're going to conduct yourself in business, how you conduct yourself having a business meal. There are so many things that go into this development, if you will, as a professional. And so one of the things that came up with, you get two senior manager mentors when you're there, and you get two partner mentors. So there's a lot of coaching and mentoring that goes on, obviously, there.
Yeah.
But I remember, these conversations a great deal. A guy by the name of Tom Steiner. He saw that I liked to dress nice. I like to present myself well. I felt like it was a distinguishing characteristic for me. When I showed up in places, people would pay attention. And so he threw this booklet on the desk for me. And it was a catalog. And a lot of the clothes matches. A guy who was always well prepared, both from a skill perspective, from a mental perspective. And when he showed up, you knew he was like, that's Tom Steiner, right? And so he always had matching items. The suits were great, the ties, everything was crisp. And people thought he was a partner most of the time because Tom looked like a partner. And so the thing that I learned from him was it is what you know, and those things get you into the door.
Sure.
But the way that you show up, your executive presence is really important. Whether you're walking through the airport, whether you're, leaving a basketball game, going to a business meeting, or whatever it is, people should look at you and know that something is different about you. They should look at you and see that you take great care and thought, how you show up. And so Tom Steiner was really helpful for me because I started ordering from Paul Frederick back in 1991, August of 1991. And here we are, close to July of 2026. And this jacket is a Paul Frederick jacket. So I still order from Paul Frederick to this day because it was one of those things that I knew I could get quality clothing and I knew that I could show up well. And I got to tell you, the first time I walked into an office where there were seasoned executives, VPs of finance and CEOs and board chairs, and I walk in and someone says, "Are you Mr. Graham?" This young, 23-year-old, Black man from Baltimore, is walking into a room, and that's what people are saying. So it's one of those things to me that lets people know that you are actually about business, that lets people know that you're serious. And it also lets people know that, this is something that you care that much about, that you're going to take this much attention and pay this much attention and this much detail, to the work that you're doing. And it should be a component of you and who you are that this is the type of person that I am, and this is the type of work that I'm going to give you. These are the types of things I'm going to give you in order for you to get what you need. So showing up changes the perception for people a great deal. And it changes the dialogue a great deal, because I think what some folks don't realize is showing up and being prepared isn't just what you know, it's also how you conduct yourself and how you look.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I thought it was important. I know, particularly with a lot of our younger professionals, the thought is, I don't want to lose my identity. I don't want to take away from my brand. I'm here to, of course, impact your bottom line. And what I share with them or ask them this question, and you've heard it, I'm sure, 1,000 times, is, how the first question that I ask is, how long does it take for you to make a first impression with someone?
Yeah.
Usually it's less than 2 minutes. Sure, it fluctuates. Sometimes it could be just instant. And we live in a fast-paced world, so we don't have a lot of time to then quickly assess or learn about Daryl Graham or Wendy Wilson, right? So we're looking at what we visually capture and then make decisions, albeit not, fair, but that's the reality that we live in. So I always ask that initial question. And then the next question that I ask is, when is the next opportunity going to dawn your your presence, your steps, if you will? And then most people say, I have no idea. Back to that piece that you shared earlier. Because we don't know, we need to be prepared. And part of that preparation is how we present ourselves. We don't get to deviate from whatever the requirement is. I'm not sure if Strata has a dress code or not. They may. And even if they don't, you established one for yourself early on in your career. And that has, I know, influenced much of your success. So that's the message that and I know you do that just to, by example. And then I'm sure you were with young professionals all the time, and then certainly those that are still matriculating through Strata
Yeah.
and the wonderful initiative, an example in that and sharing that with them. But I wanted you to share that specifically because it's so important. And I know young men, many you have insurmountable challenges that you deal with on a daily basis. And my goal is to always say to them, let's eliminate some of those. There's some things that we can get ahead of to lessen the number of challenges that you have.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's one of the things that one of my clients when I was at KPMG, because at KPMG, you after your first year, you typically start running your own engagements, and you're working for a specific senior manager, a specific partner, et cetera. But it's your responsibility to make sure the setup for the engagement works, all the planning's done, and then the execution of the work, and then the outcome, obviously, for whatever takes place as a part of that engagement. There were times when you would run into someone at the grocery store, because we're in middle it was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, so in the middle of central Pennsylvania. And that's when I began to realize that I can't just show up somewhere, not shaven, wearing a sweatsuit, hair not combed. It is I if I'm going to run into folks, whether it's at the airport, the grocery store, or the gas station, people have to see that in you. They have to see those things about you and what you do, and it has to become a part of who you are. And I always say this because this is where I got this from a good client of mine who says, "You dress and behave for the role that you want." So if you want to be the CEO, if you want to be the executive vice president, you want to be the senior vice president, whatever that might be, it is you have to prepare for it, but you
Sure.
also have to conduct yourself in a way in which you can be ready for it when that opportunity comes. People have to see that in you before you get there. And if they don't see that in you, it's really difficult for them to imagine you there. So I was always interested in providing the photo, the memorable experience, the memorable conversation around, hey, this guy here, I talked to this guy, spent some time with him. We should consider him for our senior VP role. We should consider him for our CEO role. I wanted people to have that in their head way before we got to the conversation about the job is now open. I want them to be saying my name before we get to that.
Absolutely. Interviewing for it long before the job announcement even hit the paper, if you will, or the notice went out. You reminded me. I talk about that in my book. Then I make a joke about how you go to the grocery store. You mention that, and you're dressed professionally and or just dressed in a way that is representative of the brand that you were trying to convey, and you run into no one. But then that very time where I've got my baseball cap on, my sweatpants, and t-shirt on is when I run into Idris Elba and Denzel Washington. Yeah.
And it happens. It certainly happens.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the best baseball cap and best pair of sweatpants I got, right? Because you never know who you're going to run into, and
There
they
you
and
go.
they want you. If someone is seeking a CEO for an organization, and they even see that in you with your baseball cap and sweatpants,
Yeah.
because you've actually organized yourself and coordinated yourself in a way in which people still view you in that.
Sure.
So if folks begin to think about this a little bit more specifically, intentionally, it is if I ran into someone at any of these places, what I have on right now, is it going to make them view me differently than they did before, or is it going to show them even outside of that I still look like a senior vice president, executive vice president, or a CEO because of the way I conduct myself and the way I coordinate myself. So
Sure.
I think that's something that folks have to also come to grips with. Is it's something that is absolutely necessary for you to be fully aware of how you present yourself wherever you might be, because you never know who's watching.
I agree. I agree. And I love, and we'll move on from this topic, but I love that your first employer made that level of investment with those that they hired. I have, and I'm sure you've experienced or observed this before, where so many organizations are absolutely frustrated because, and this certainly was evident post COVID, with this very relaxed dress code. Some organizations still don't have anything in place, but then their frustration is people are coming in not properly dressed, but you're not educating them. There's no system in place, there's no policy in place, there's no educational process. And this has been an ongoing debate where many people are saying, well, or organizations, well, they should just know to do this. And we are learning that a lot of people don't know. They go to college or they go to the university or trade, whatever the institution might be, where they go to develop and learn these skills. But then there's a part of that that is also missing, and it is it that it occurred within the household, that their parents providing it, perhaps, maybe not. And if it's a maybe not, then who provides those lessons and that instruction? So I'm really impressed that your employer at that particular time said, we are going to make this investment. There is no excuses. And then you position, meaning the organization, you're in a better position to hold people accountable. There's no excuses because we provided you with a level of instruction, and given you this knowledge and information that we deem is very important and impacts our bottom line.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've been in meetings. It's funny you say that. I've been in meetings and discussions around this topic, in several different fronts, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit boards,
Mhm.
whether it's fraternities or sororities, et cetera. We were on a call. We just celebrated our 95th charter day for the Alpha Chapter Kappa Alpha Psi Morgan State University. And we had some brothers who had played basketball right before we did our Bridging the Gap live session together. And there were some who had on, they had on hats and things on their head and those sorts of things. And I had to remind them, like, you don't know who's in this audience. So remove whatever's on your head, because now that you're talking, you want people to see your complete face, and you want them to be able to recognize you, exactly how they will see you and exactly how you would actually want to be seen. And
Sure.
so in the midst of all that, it was a reminder that we have to begin to talk to younger people about what's actually appropriate or not, because many of them came up in this COVID era where there just isn't a lot of that taking place right now, and there's some habits that begin to be built over time, because that's what happened. You do, whether they're good or bad habits, over time, if you continue to do them without someone, hey, pulling you to the side and saying, hey, that's not appropriate. Think about who your audience is. Think about where you're going to be. Think about where you're trying to go. And if you're trying to do those types of things, you're going to have to really think about the way in which you present yourself on a consistent basis. If you're on a Zoom call, you shouldn't be walking around, with the ceiling moving and all sorts of other stuff happening. If you're presenting or sharing information, you should be sitting down so people can actually see you and hear you. You should have your screen on, right? It's these types of things that we really have to help folks to understand that there is a way in which you should be presenting and showing up. And we're going to have to do some training and some development around that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for bringing that up. And I promise we're going to get to these questions that I've asked you. But this is, I imagine, enlightening for a lot of people. I have a specific module in my training toolkit, if you will, that is solely dedicated to how we are presenting in the virtual space. And when I was doing research with one federal organization, asking them, tell me, share with me some of the challenges that you're having. And they're like, I've got people showing up for Zoom calls or WebEx calls still in their pajamas, and grooming items on their head and all kinds of stuff in the background, or the screen isn't on. I mean, the list was long, and I was floored because some of these individuals were very accomplished in their respective fields, attorneys and accountants and project managers. And these were the behaviors. And so it's the failure in understanding that even though you are in your home because of COVID at that particular time, or wherever you were working remote, should not then take away from the business at hand, which was to conduct business. So there were some expectations with that, Joe.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That still continues to be a challenge. Let's tackle some of these questions. My first one is a long professional journey in leadership lessons. Throughout your career, you've held positions of increasing responsibility and influence. Looking back, what experience, challenge, or opportunity accelerated your growth as a leader more than any other?
Well, that's a great question, Dr. Wilson. The opportunity to lead, the Strata HBCU initiative has accelerated my growth as a leader more than any other experience in my career to date. And while I had spent years leading, philanthropy and investments and building partnerships, this role actually required me to move beyond funding institutions or organizations and into the true co-creation with Strata trustees, with leadership team members, with HBCU presidents and chancellors, with faculty, staff, students, industry leaders, and the like. That's a lot of stakeholders to have to build around. But it challenged me to listen differently. We spent 7.5 months listening to presidents and chancellors. Some of them brought their entire leadership teams or cabinets, to these conversations with us during that time, because it was all COVID, so it was all on Zoom. But it led us to really think about how we could influence more by listening and co-creating together. When people see themselves in something, they tend to engage a heck of a lot more than they do when they're not. So
Sure.
most importantly for me, this opportunity, which was a very unique thing for a funding organization to do, it reinforced that leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about bringing people together around, hopefully creating a shared vision of what we want to accomplish with close to 50 institutions, mostly HBCUs, almost half of them actually, and creating conditions where there could be collective success. That was not the formula for success, prior to COVID, but it became that. And very fortunate that being able to work at a place like Strata, having great connectivity to the leadership team here, to our board of trustees, and now to our partners, which you are a part of that body of work and still a partner in that work. Um, it 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 created significant challenges, but it didn't mean that it was time for us to say, or time for me to say, well, while there are great challenges, it just means that there's greater opportunity for us to come up with a wide array of ideas and concepts where we don't have to do the cookie cutter thing and put that on all the HBCUs, since there are so many of them. It was HBCUs have been around. Some have been around for over 150, 160, 180 years. They pretty much know how to bring students in. Let's create something that is going to allow the institutions to do what they do really well. But let's see if there's something that we can all learn, and see if there's some best practices that are working really well. And let's be open to trying some things. So it definitely challenged, my leadership in a different way, but it opened up the spectrum a great deal for me to grow and to learn. And now we've got such great outcomes. Institutions are doing, we'll get into this probably later, some other questions, but there's so many great things that are happening on different campuses. But because we were empowering folks and not basically telling them what they needed to do because they wanted the money, the co-creation opportunity created a greater sense of empowerment. And so that's where leadership for me allowed for this to take place, but it also allowed for me to learn.
Yeah, you and I've had this conversation on several occasions, but so much to be proud of in terms of, you mentioned the word outcomes. And I have developed a relationship with one of the, I've been mentoring one of the scholars probably for the last 2 years. And I've just seen her growth. Very shy when she started out, brilliant, of course,
Mhm.
but very reserved. And so she calls me the other day to say, Doc, just want to give you an update on things. And so I've registered for my patent, and I've designed this app, and we'll have to speak off record because you guys will just absolutely.
It's great.
And I just remember from day one where she wasn't sure about what the next was and putting unnecessary pressure. So yes, the outcomes are important and certainly worthy of celebrating. But I love the piece that you said, just the challenges that you've had along the way. And I had not thought about that. Many of us have to face that when we're in roles where you have to deal with different stakeholders or different demographics. Because those are varied audiences, the way in which you engage, interact, approach, educate them, whatever the process, not process may be, but whatever the interaction may require, you will then have to then shift. That does require a lot. Very good.
Yes. Yes.
Every successful leader encounters setbacks, disappointments, or moments of doubt. Can you share an experience that challenged you professionally and what it all taught you about leadership and resilience?
Great. Another great question, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you.
I would say one of the greatest challenges in leadership is navigating change when outcomes are uncertain. When we started this, we didn't know
Yeah.
what was going to happen. We're gonna invest in close to 50 institutions, focused mainly on HBCUs. We're going to focus on 500 scholars coming through this initiative, with the hope that from a leadership development lens, we're going to help them navigate through this wonderful educational process, educational journey in post secondary, particularly at an HBCU, because there's nothing better than an HBCU. We all know that. But that's the thing is none of us were certain, but in the co-creation model where we're actually working together, it makes things a heck of a lot easier to say, let's work together, and let's see what we can actually accomplish by working as a collective. And so as I think about my career, like, there have been initiatives that didn't unfold exactly as planned, despite significant effort and preparation. Some never came to light at all. Those moments teach you about resilience. You're never going to avoid disappointment. It's just going to happen. It is, but how do you maintain perspective, even though you know that those things can happen sometime? How do you adapt quickly to say, we're going to move in this direction because this is, the wind's coming from the west. And so we're going to go east a little bit more to get around this and move forward. We have to stay committed to what we're seeking to accomplish. Though sometimes the wind changes and adjusts, the storms come and they go. And that's really important because leadership requires a courage to make decisions with imperfect information and the humility to learn from setbacks. That requires a great deal of intestinal fortitude. And so those are the things that, you learn from those experiences. It is, we could sit here and wither away and feel bad about something when it doesn't go well. But I've learned that, challenges often become great teachers. They show you, how you could have done something a little bit differently, or what were the conditions that made it even more so complicated. Are we willing to reflect? Are we willing to adjust? And are we going to keep moving forward? The answer is yes. It's just the direction that we might go in might just be a little bit different. So you might see those signs for those of you who drive and you're navigating around construction. We all get this construction season all over the country at this point, right? You see these signs that say detour, and it's okay. Detours are not bad. You just got to make sure once you take that detour, make sure you get back onto the path that you need to get on so that you get where you need to go. And this is no different than that.
Very good. I love that. Love that. Let's delve into specifically the topic of executive presence, please. We've discussed this actually off and on throughout our conversation this morning, but it begins before you actually enter the room. Well, I took these off and I need to read. How has emotional intelligence shaped your effectiveness as a leader, particularly during challenging moments or periods of uncertainty? You just spoke of that a few moments ago in your last response.
Yeah,
But
sure. And I'll expand upon that, Dr. Wilson. Look, emotional intelligence is the foundation of leadership to me. It is during times of uncertainty, people often look to leaders not only for direction, but we also look for reassurance and stability. Like someone, the captain of the ship, the person that's driving and navigating in the car, you're going to have to be the ultimate decision maker, even if everybody's screaming and barking at you. And they might have a little bit of fear, right? So you have to begin to understand, first of all, your own emotions, because we all have them. It's not like we're not human. You have to recognize, what others may have experienced. They might have had a bad experience along a journey, and you have to navigate with some level of humility, peace, and calmness. And responding, in a lot of cases with empathy just allows you to build trust in difficult circumstances, right? I've learned that people may forget what you have said, but they remember how you made them feel.
yeah,
They remember what you did, in order to change the circumstance, right? So emotional intelligence, I believe, enables leaders. And then not sure we're clear on leader. Just because someone is in a leadership seat does not make them a leader. Leaders have specific characteristics about them. And the things that they do, the first and foremost, is leaders actually look to serve first. Leaders have humility. They learn how to listen. They know how to listen, and they know how to navigate when things are tough. Now, everybody know, of course, and everybody can navigate, when things are easy and good. If that road is smooth, hey, it's great. You can just ride on down that smooth road. If you're a sailor and you're out there and the seas are calm, everything's great. It's what you do when things are uncomfortable is what's going to test your eternal fortitude and determine how much of a leader or how good of a leader you are. So emotional intelligence, I believe, that creates the environments where people feel valued, people feel heard, empowered, and they contribute and engage far more differently when that happens. And so it's okay if you're a leader and people understand how you feel about things. Because, we often seen leaders who stoically behave in a certain way and then they go into a corner in the room and cry, right?
mm,
It's being your authentic self
Yes.
as a leader allows people to have trust in you. And so these are things that we were going through as it relates to this initiative. And some folks are probably saying, what are you talking about? The HBCU initiative at Strata is a 25, now $26 million 8-year initiative. And we began working on this out of all that was going on in the country. There was COVID, there was the George Floyd incident, then there was the passing of Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis. Good trouble. When that happened, it was clear to us that we needed to focus on leadership development, and we were going to partner with HBCUs. So now what does that mean? Oh, we're going to go out and write in a press release. Oh, no, you're going to go out and talk about this. It's like, no, we're going to find partners and we're going to talk about it together. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, you've done a really great job of that. And here's
Thank you.
to another 8 years. I don't know what the plans are, but I'm sure hopeful for that. We've talked about professional appearance communicates before you speak. I want to ask you this question. Have you ever encountered an individual whose talent, intelligence, or technical expertise exceeded how they were perceived professionally? What advice would you offer that person today?
Absolutely. If you live long enough, and you and I, Dr. Wilson, have lived long enough, you see just about everything. We've met, very highly talented individuals whose expertise wasn't fully recognized, right? Because they struggled to communicate their value. They didn't know how to build relationships. They didn't demonstrate, what we refer to as executive presence. Now that might mean a lot of things to a lot of people,
Sure.
but executive presence to me is even if you're washing your car or going to the bank to get money out of the bank or talk to a banker, handle some investments, whatever it is. When you have executive presence, people treat you like an executive, irregardless of where you are, what you're wearing, and what you do. Now, I won't say irregardless of just if you're wearing just anything. When you have executive presence, you walk into a place with a tracksuit, and somebody will know with the level of confidence that you have, with the way that you treat and speak to people, that that person right there, he or she, is someone important, someone who has values, someone who is a leader because they're behaving as if they are. And so when I think about people who I see who don't do that, I'll share a little bit of advice. And my advice would be this: technical excellence gets you invited to the table, but executive presence helps your voice be heard once you get there. If you don't have those two, if you don't have the first one, you certainly won't get to the second one. And if you don't have the second one, you'll quickly be excused from those environments.
Sure.
So invest in communication skills, seek feedback from as many people as you choose.
It's good.
Don't handpick people. Pick people who are going to truthfully talk to you about where you really are. And if you're looking for purpose and intent, talk to those people who may not necessarily be in your corner. Build authentic relationships with people. When I say authentic, again, people shouldn't be yesing you to death. That's not authentic. That's placating you. Authentic relationships, we talk about the good, bad, and ugly. That's how that works. And lastly, just understand that how you show up is often as important as what you know. Your competence should never be a secret. I'll stop there, Dr. Wilson, because I
Those are
feel
lots of jewels. I felt like I should be recording this. Yeah, I always say everyone should have a well-informed, diverse body of board of directors in your life. So this person can, give you the very honest, well, hopefully all of them should be honest, but give you your thoughts as it relates to,
yeah,
one particular area. How did I handle that situation? Can you give me some guidance? Or, you continue to want to wear that style shoes and that's no longer flattering to you, or you overuse this word. It could be any and everything, but the goal is to certainly to continue to grow and have an impact in whatever space that you're in. That's good. But
absolutely.
I too have run across a lot of people who that decision that you're making is that's what's holding you back. Now, what they do with that information, you know, is on them. But you,
Absolutely. I mean, we've all, advised, talented people along the way, and as far as your career has gone and mine, there's two ways that, your career can go. Well, three, right? It can stay where it is. You might do some laterals, but the higher you get, the harder it is to go up. So if it becomes harder to go up, that means that the competition is going to be even greater.
sure.
So how are you, and this is for you folks who are probably sitting there asking a question. So glad you did ask yourself this question. How am I going to distinguish myself from the others? And it is, you should know specifically who you are and what purpose you absolutely have. Because when you begin to talk about that purpose, talk about who you are, if people want someone who values those things that you're talking about and values the type of person that you are, the type of work ethic that you have, you won't be in the line waiting to hear from that job, or you're going to get that offer because you have distinguished yourself from the rest. I'll give you an example really quickly. I remember interviewing for a role, and the other finalist in the role absolutely destroyed himself because he asked one question, and they knew right away. And when I heard this, I quickly laughed. He said, "Well, this job requires you to travel, requires you to work on some weekends and do all these other things. What type of comp time do you offer folks, for all of that time that you spend away?" So let me just help everybody out with this. If you are trying to get to the C-suite and you want to be in it and you want to be the leader of it, don't ask that question.
Yeah.
Don't. There's
Right.
certain things that you should not. And if you don't understand what those things are, I highly recommend you hire someone like a Dr. Wilson to help you to understand. There are certain things that when you want to get to this level that they just don't matter. And you
Sure.
don't have to ask those questions. Because when you do ask those questions, you're going to find yourself looking on the outside, looking on the inside, because those are not the things that people think about. You do what you have to do to get the job done. And when the job is done, you know what? You take vacation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I think I thought I've heard it all. What strikes me about you sharing that story is if they were applying for or seeking a position, it sounds like in a C-suite space and was an executive role, which means that they likely have some years of experience behind them where they should have learned better, but apparently not. Those, to me, those are the kind of lessons that you offer or you educate young professionals. And I do that because I've heard of instances where young people have walked in. And when I say young, I'm meaning just, newly minted coming out of college or high school. And they're like, hey, so, I know I got the job, but I need to take 3 weeks off because my family's going, to XYZ. So those are the things that I educate or train on to say, don't do that. Part of your negotiation is this was already planned. Is there a possibility? They may say no. We need you to, and you need to make that decision. Is this still the position or role that you want to seek? But do as much research on the front end as possible. So that's disappointing to hear that here you have this person clearly seasoned with some years coming in the door looking for, when is that? When are you going to dole out that comp time for all of this? And when you applied for the job, clearly they outlined that in the job profile. There's 25% travel, there's 75% travel, and your life will change because of that. Is this something that you want to pursue? Those are the decisions that you make on the front end. So
Absolutely. And, folks have to begin to understand that if you get to that point, and maybe you should practice having conversations with people. If you haven't had practice, you and I have
mm,
had these conversations, many times, Dr. Wilson, about executive presence and coaching and mentoring folks. It's clear to me that this person, and people do it all the time, don't think about the types of things that they're focused on as it relates to these types of opportunities. It is,
Sure.
if someone's asking you to run a 25 or $100 million enterprise,
Yes.
the last thing you want to do is ask a question that you should already know is not a good question to ask.
Right. Right. Or deviating from the main thing, which is I need to maintain, me being the organization, this, we want to maintain this billion-million-dollar enterprise. And so that should be the focus. It is up to you to manage what amounts to is your personal life. And I don't want to convey to the audience that your wellness and your care is not important, and taking time off. It absolutely is. But you are there to serve, to either help them produce or provide a service or to create a product. It's one or the other. And that's what the focus of the organization should be. So
Right.
yeah, don't talk yourself out of the opportunity before, yeah, it's even offered. Let's go into the area of workforce readiness and career success. You do this all the time, so this is an ideal question for you. If you were advising a recent graduate or an early career professional during the first 90 days on the job, what three pieces of advice would you offer to help them establish credibility and position themselves for long-term success?
So at this point, you've gotten the job. You're in, right? You're there. So what do I do? That's a great question. First, be curious. Ask questions. Learn the culture. Talk to people about the culture. Talk to people about what's going on. Spend time meeting with people. Grab coffee with folks. Grab lunch with folks. So continue to learn. Be a sponge. Understand how decisions are made in this environment. So it's about being curious, right? That's what this first part is all about. And you should keep that curiosity going through, not just through this 90 days, but while you're in this role, while you're in this career, always be curious. Second, be dependable. Be dependable. Deliver on your commitments. Meet deadlines and meet them early. Don't wait till the day of. Something's due on Friday, submit it on Thursday night, right? And then that gives people time to absorb and digest information and do what it is that you say you're going to do. If you tell folks that you are going to get this done, you're going to work with this person, and you're going to make this happen, make sure that you do those things. Make sure that you follow up. Make sure that you show up, and make sure people can rely on you for exactly what you say. Third, build relationships. It's very important to do this. Success is rarely achieved alone. And if anybody tells you that they've done all of this stuff in their career and they've done it alone, do not believe them. That is not true. We've all had people pouring into us. We've all had people working along, colleagues, others working alongside us, people who we hire. If I said to you, it's great that I did all this work to make Strata's HBCU initiative great, you should look at me like I'm crazy, because it didn't take a person, an individual to do it. It took a team of people here at Strata, a group of partners outside of Strata to make it happen. And so the thing that happens there is this. You begin to think about other people's success as they're driving success for the things that you are driving to. And what happens then is you become a leader, you become a mentor, you become a coach, because you're learning the right way. You're learning ways and skills and talents that are going to take you very, very far. So if you do those things, consistently, opportunities will follow.
I would agree. That's good. Good advice. Thank you. What is one workplace skill, behavior, or professional habit that organizations can no longer afford to assume employees already possess? And what are the consequences when missing it?
Ooh, two words: professional communication. And you know this oh so well, Dr. Wilson. In an increasingly digital and hybrid workplace where most people are sending text and abbreviated, I guess they're considered words, abbreviations and text, and Instagram and all of this other stuff on social, you have to have the ability to communicate clearly, respectfully, and effectively, because it's very essential for that to happen. When the skill is missing, misunderstandings increase, collaboration suffers, trust erodes, and productivity declines. And so many organizations, again, they can teach you the technical skills, but there are times when you're going to have to communicate information and share information with others to determine, if there's an issue or if there's something that's going really well, and we need to fix this as a part of this issue to become 80% efficient, to become 95% efficient. Those are the types of things that help organizations to save money. Those are the things that help organizations to drive meaningful partnerships, to build better products, to have better outcomes. Since we're talking about students in a lot of cases, and so professional communication has been a thing in our society. And so for those of you out there who, and I'm not saying you need to master it. Dr. Wilson has mastered it. She's really great at this stuff. But what I'm saying is you must do this really well. You must develop this skill and cultivate this skill in every aspect of what you do, because it will be a change maker. It will be a thing that distinguishes you from the others, because there are not a lot of people out there that are mastering this. There are a lot of people who don't do it very well for a number of reasons, because they're not practicing it. They're practicing what's going on in social and all these other places. That's not going to get you down the road into these environments. It's going to prevent you from getting to these environments. So professional communication is a must. You must do this well.
Yes, I had to sit back in my chair. I totally agree. And even though I train on this on a regular basis, I'm still in awe over the lack. And I'm really now torn because a lot of this is really, you mentioned or use the term professional communication, and organizations are now saying it's not even the professional communication, this the basic fundamentals. And I need a workforce. So what do I do? So of course now the conversations are, it's kind of the finger pointing. What aren't post-secondary education systems doing? What isn't the K through 12 system doing? Shouldn't they be getting this information at their parents' knee when they're growing up? And so it's pretty pervasive, and it's very unfortunate. And you're absolutely right. This technology that we stay tethered to all the time, these computers, they are there's so many advantages, but there's so many disadvantages, and I don't think we're fully embracing. You kind of alluded to that. So you've got people communicating, and I had this conversation with an earlier guest about texting, and that then becomes the way in which we communicate, that is then applicable to every way in which we communicate. So you're looking at abbreviations, and I've seen this when I was working for an institution, and you get a communication, it would elevate all the way to the C-suite from a student, and you would be almost paralyzed by what you were reading, because of course they wanted you to take some action. They thought it, serious, and it was to them. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but the message was lost because of the failure to effectively communicate. And again, as we talked about the whole professional aesthetic, and when I first meet Wendy Wilson, Daryl Graham, I'm making decisions immediately. The next thing is then when we start conversing, or if it's something in writing, I'm making a decision about you. So I don't, one guest, hers will air before yours, you know her well, Dr. Reynolds, and she said to me, I don't think it's the employer's responsibility to have to deal with that. And you're shaking your head. I'm
I
assuming that you.
agree. I know. I agree. I would agree with Dr. Penny. I agree. It's up to you. You have to decide. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Wilson, but
You're fine.
when I began to think about this particular question and think about what I was going to say in it, I had to make a conscious decision. And I think people are going to have to make this conscious. I'm sure you have too. Instead of sitting at my table with my, device, you know, and using an urban dictionary to try to figure out what folks are saying. I just decided that I was going to write in plain English when I text, and I'm just going to write shorter sentences
Okay. Okay.
as opposed to trying to figure out, like, what does that mean? And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to respond in this way because I don't want to begin to get comfortable with that way of
Habit
writing,
forming. Right.
because it
Mhm.
becomes a habit. And then you start seeing that show up in your letters to people, your communication. You're like, I don't have an urban dictionary near me, and I don't feel like looking one up on my phone. Can you
Right.
just write in plain English? And so
Right.
we people are going to have to make a decision, and that's why I labeled the answer professional communication.
No, that's good. That's good. No, and thank you for putting that label on it. Let's just stay here a few seconds. I was
Sure,
reminded, went
sure.
all the way back to second grade with my favorite teacher, Miss Johnson. We would have to, every night we had vocabulary words and we would, have to go home and practice them. The next day come in and she would sit with us individually and we'd say them and then give the definition of that. And so that coupled with my parents, there was just things that you certainly could not say or do, and in terms of communication. So it started with me earlier. And I, by no means do I think I'm an anomaly or an exception. It grew up it happens in many households. One of the things that I have made, that I've experienced just throughout my life's journey, and particularly in the African American community, is when we enter certain spaces as it relates to communication, then we get the label of your code switching. And I was reminded of what you said earlier, about you have to deal with presidents, you have to deal with trustees, you have to deal with students, the list is long, faculty, staff. I'm sure you have to deal with legislators, you have to deal with peers, all of those things. And so the adopting of behavior or a decision, if you will, to, as you just said, I'm writing in plain English, shorter sentences because I'm using this device, because I know that communication is going to be universal. Now, do we absolutely get in our very intimate or close circles and we get a little relaxed? And absolutely we do. And
Sure.
we should be allowed to do that and feel comfortable doing that. But you also, again, should normalize, and I use this word often in my training, and make that decision that I know that I need to shift, that I cannot get or become relaxed with the president of Morgan State when I'm having a conversation with him, or as I would with your daughter, or with my children. And so that's what we're constantly having to educate. But I have, as you said, seen, it's concerning to me, and the reason I said I'm kind of torn, should employers have a role in this? And I believe we're going to have to get to the point where we have to. Is it their responsibility? No. But I don't know. I'm just really, I'm torn with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to boil down to a couple of things, right?
Mhm.
It is, I talked about earlier that, the KPMG model of training,
Sure.
included a lot of those things. This is the methodology in which we like to communicate. This is the way in which we like to, run engagements. This is the way in which, we like to do things. And we want to train people so they understand what those are. I imagine that, and this is probably a great thing for a community college to think about. I can imagine that at some point, and you know this well because you were at a 2 year institution as well. At the 2 year institutions, I learned how to do public speaking, not from going to college or from an employer. I learned about it because I took some courses in doing it, and did a lot of the different things, Toastmasters and other things. I went and watched people do it, and
Yes.
and that's how I became comfortable with it. It's still going to you're going to have to want to do it in order
Mhm.
for it to happen for you. And if the employer does, they're probably going to do a piece of it or some of it, but the expectation is that you're probably gonna have to do it, probably 70-75% of the way, and maybe they'll do 25% to help you get there. But people are going to have to make that investment, and they're going to have to make a choice as to what direction am I going to go in, and am I going to be able to live with that decision, because it's going to be a thing that differentiates you or not.
Yeah. Being intentional, being mindful of the circles that you place yourself in. You're right. You're right. I don't disagree with that. I just it's so pervasive, and there has been a huge breakdown in the educational system. So many things have been extracted, exposure, and then again, I blame a lot of it. We're blaming on technology. There's a social engagement is almost now a lost art form because we're socializing with technology instead of
Yeah.
face to face, where those experiences help to shape and develop us. Thank you for staying in that space a little longer than, but I think it was important to share. What is one professional habit or behavior that can quietly derail an otherwise promising career?
Easy. Failing to follow through.
Okay, follow through.
Talent always opens up the door for people, but reliability builds trust. If you can't build trust with people, they're not going to call you. I mean, Dr. Wilson, you actually did some great work with us, helping our students understand the purpose of their brand, getting onto LinkedIn, and why it's important to be good there, and to be present there, and to think about presence as a part of that, right? That built trust for the scholars. That built trust for us. And so we continued to do that for the first couple of years because the scholars really needed it. We didn't know that, but they needed it. And so here we are, right? If people begin to wonder if you're going to deliver on your commitments, you should probably see fewer opportunities, to get, key positions, key roles, key initiatives, because when you have not built trust and you haven't done what you're supposed to do, the one thing that hurts you, it doesn't matter what environment that you're in, and we live in a global society now, so it's not hard for people to find out a bit about you. Your credibility erodes. And when you have very little or no credibility, you're not going to get the opportunities, to do things or to be in spaces or to get to that level, particularly if you're trying to get to the C suite, right? So over time, those who are dependable, they're going to have plenty of opportunity. So you have to be one of those folks that follows through. The failure to follow through has significant consequences. And to me, I believe that these things can be deadly to a career because we're all connected. There are 240 million people on LinkedIn. Found this out the other day. When we started this initiative at Strata back in 2020, there was 120 million people on LinkedIn. Double now that on LinkedIn. So when you start to think about people are going to ask questions about you, they see your network out there, they might reach out to people to find out, hey, what type of person is he or she? What's their work ethic like? I see that you've worked with them before. If you have damaged relationships because your failure to get things done, your failure to follow through, your failure to build trust, it's going to be deadly for your career as you move forward because it's hard for you to overcome those types of things.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
so through professional organizations, networking relationships, social media, it's easy to get to people who might know you to find out, are you any good or not? So that's one thing that I think is really damaging to people's careers, and the fallout could be significant.
I was my mind was spinning when you were making the statement about that, and of course, your reputation matters. But I recalled now that I'm in this podcast space, doing a lot of research and looking at other podcasters, and there's one that I follow, and she was speaking with this very seasoned VP. In fact, he worked for no longer works for him, but he was kind of the right hand to Jeff Bezos, and I cannot recall his name. But he's just talking about his experiences. He worked in the human resources space and mistakes that he made, all the like. But he said something that really stood out, and it was when you're checking references. Of course, I'm going to list the people that I know are going to speak favorably of me, which everybody does, right? And so what I didn't realize, and I was like, I guess people do that. I hadn't thought about it. He says, so I've listed Daryl Graham as my reference. He reaches out to Daryl Graham to find out, tell me a little bit more what you know about Wendy Wilson. Daryl Graham does that. And then his next question is, so can you share with me some other individuals that I can speak to that could give me some insight on Wendy Wilson? And that is that far fetched to do? No, it obviously happens every day. But what struck me about that is that really is a roll of the dice because he may mention somebody that Wendy would not want to, and that person may be forthcoming with all the information. Now, I'd also, I've done this too. Oh, I know, Damian Padilla works at Strata, so I can reach out to him, or I know this person that works at Strata. I don't have to go through that. I got that part, but to ask that person, can you give me some other individuals that might be willing to share about Wilson? My point in that is, and point that you were making is that your brand and your reputation is so important. And what are people saying about you when you are not in the room?
Yeah.
And what are they basing that on? And as you said, follow through, meeting the deliverables and the established timelines. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
It's absolutely deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. You answered all of my questions successfully, but we've got to wrap up in rapid fire round. If you could indulge me just a little bit longer, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. One word that best describes your professional brand.
Purposeful.
That's good. That's good. That's good. When you leave a room, what do you want people to remember about you?
That I genuinely cared and added value to the conversation.
I was commenting about you the other day. You are I believe your communication superpower is you are a really great listener. You're an active listener. And yeah, you people, you put the blinders on, you're really focused on what are they say. It's like no one else. And I've seen people just thrive in that space that you create for them because we want to be seen and heard. So
thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. What is the best career advice you've ever received?
Goes back to this, the last question you asked before the rapid fire, right? Relationships matter. Treat every interaction as an opportunity to build trust.
Good. That's good. Will you tell me what is your communication superpower? I just told you. You might disagree and say no.
You just said what it is, Dr. Wilson. Connecting people around shared purpose and earning their trust, I think will move the needle for many people, for many communities, for many others. So I feel like my superpower is the ability to connect. And, you've been a big part of, our leadership summits, people thought we were just pulling people together, and it's the place where all of the partner institutions who are in the initiative, as well as industry partners that are out there, scholars, our friends and folks here at Strata, board, leadership team, et cetera. It's the thing that is connecting people, that's providing, stronger networks, that's providing people with the ability to share who they are and what they do and feel confident about themselves when they leave. People come one way and leave better than they came. And that's really what the point was. So connecting people around shared purpose is one I think that's really been huge for me.
Excellent. Excellent. What signals professionalism to you?
Like anything else, it always starts with preparation. Preparation is very important. I used to be afraid to speak. People don't believe me when I tell them this, but this because we've talked about it. I didn't do any public speaking until I was over 30 years old because I was afraid to do it. And so once I overcame that fear, it is, how am I going to be effective in the space? One, I need to prepare really well. So preparation is a big thing for me. Accountability is big. Say what you're going to do and go and execute and do it, and then come back and tell people how well it went and what outcomes came from it and what we can do to keep moving forward. And then presence and respect for others. Like those to me are all fairly significant. When I see people come and they have no speech. I did a commencement speech at Benedict this past
Yes,
commencement
you did.
season. And the one thing that I did is I think I watched 50 people do commencement speeches before I
Boy.
did mine. And I think I watched 50 more after the fact. It's so many people walk up there and they don't have you could tell the folks that did not prepare
Yes.
and the folks that did. And I don't want to be that person that's not prepared. I don't want anybody to walk away and say, that he's a nice guy and all, but definitely doesn't come prepared to make remarks.
Yeah.
Don't ever want that one. So
Yeah.
preparation is big for me. It's a big deal.
Well, there's no time like the present. You took a little of my thunder away. I was going to acknowledge that towards the end, but now is a perfect time. Yes, Dr. Graham. Dr. Graham. So you were not only a commencement speaker, which is a huge honor unto itself. And I agree with you that I've seen so many, I have heard my fair share of them probably ad nauseum in my head, because my last role I was sat on the stage, called names, and so you'd have to sit and listen to them, and some were rock star commencement speeches, and then some you're like, this is a snoozer, and you did not do your research. You just did you just take some notes on the napkin while on your flight over? But having said that, you were the commencement speaker, as you said, which is a huge honor. And then on top of that, you were bestowed the honor. You are now Dr. Graham, an honorary doctorate, which is just because of your philanthropic work and your huge endeavors and impact that you have made in so many spaces, but particularly in the post-secondary education space. So well deserved, well deserved.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Dr. Graham. You're welcome, Dr. Graham. Indulge me, a few more questions. What is the most underrated professional skill?
Listening with intention. I think, there are times when I've seen it happen so much where people walk into a meeting and they already know what they want the outcome to be. So they don't really listen. They're just there to placate people. And then they just go do what they intended to do in the first place. I don't think you learn anything that way. I don't think you gain anything from it. And so, as you mentioned, and thank you for that compliment, I've learned to listen with intent. I strive to be present where my feet are and where my body is, so that I can really absorb. We visited many of our campus partners. We've learned a lot from those experiences. The initiative has evolved because of it. And so it's clear to us and it's clear to me that you get a lot further and you get a lot more people who want to walk with you when you listen and operate with intention and purpose.
Yeah. I agree. And you do that well. I'm still a student. I'm working on that, but I own my social battery. Yeah, these days. I'm approaching 60. I don't know if that's what it is. Text, email, phone call, or face-to-face conversation. Which do you prefer and why?
It's obviously face-to-face. Nothing replaces the authenticity and the connection of being in the room with someone. I have a former colleague who I work with at JP Morgan Chase, who used to always say, anyone can be brave over the phone. So that's a shout out to my dear colleague and friend, Tom O'Donnell, if he's watching this, because that was always true back then. People could scream and yell at folks all the time over the phone. Sit down face to face with somebody and see if that same, if that same energy will exist when that happens. And most times it doesn't.
It does not.
So, yeah. So fast.
Yeah, I prefer face-to-face too, or, second phone call. But what I have noticed over the years with the constant use of email, and then now with the incorporation of people are texting to communicate, even with business in that environment, that you get a lot of bravado. They get brave behind that email. And then when you step up and like, let me go pay you a visit, it's different. Oh, I didn't. Yes. Yeah. So I knew something got lost in translation, because I know you didn't need to give me that level of energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. It ranges. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's good. I would agree. Face to face is certainly much more. There's an advantage to that. Who is a leader you admire and why?
Late great Jack Welch, who was while he was the chairman and the CEO of General Electric, he empowered people to utilize their skills, their brilliance, along with their network to develop solutions to problems before discussing the problem. So his mantra was, don't bring me don't bring me the problem at all if you haven't taken the time to figure out what the solutions could be. And solutions mean there's an option one, two, maybe an option three.
Mhm.
And you've taken some time to do some research and do some homework before bringing that discussion to light. And again, not a novel concept, but it was what great leaders do. They help to create more leaders. And so I'm a big fan of leaders like that. Many of our presidents are leaders, many of the presidents and chancellors that we've had the opportunity to work with, President and CEO Rosalind Clark Artist at Benedict College. Respect her a great deal. Seen lots of great visionary leaders. Dr. Macola Abdul at Virginia State, and Dr. David Wilson at Morgan State, and Dr. Bro at Bowie State. And the list could go on, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen these types of things in those leaders who work directly with their teams and their communities. They're there to serve, and the vision isn't just about there's a fist that's going down because it's a dictatorship. This is a community of practice, and we're all here to and empowered to add and contribute to being successful. And successful outcomes mean students don't just graduate. Students actually leave and they go places and they thrive. That is success. And so those are the types of things that really matter to me when it comes to leaders. And those types of leaders really give me hope that we can actually move the needle in a lot of spaces as we move forward.
Yeah. I smiled when you used the term community of practice. I think we oftentimes miss that. And because we are this institution, and we've been in business for 100 years, 180 years, 2 days, that we oftentimes people approach where everything must be right. No, yeah. It's a learning process. Just because conditions and circumstances change, thus this enterprise will also have to change back to the word, practice. So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, how do you manage stress and maintain perspective during demanding seasons?
I focus on the mission. What are we trying to accomplish? Prioritize the things that matter most, and remind myself that challenges are temporary, but impact is lasting. Challenges are temporary, impact is lasting. So I listen to music, I watch great comedians, I find time to rest my mind, body and soul, I should say mind, body, and soul. Sorry, all together. Exercise, walking, and spend time with family and great friends. The things that matter to you most, will eventually get to that place where you ultimately want them to be. But you have to actually practice good self-care in order to get there. Focus on whatever the mission is that you're trying to get to, and take care of yourself. You'll do really well. But if you allow for all these demands to drive you into the ground, that's exactly what they'll do. So you have to find, that happy balance between work hard, get things done. Okay, and then I get back to center. What is it going to take for you to do that? Go to a concert if you like music. Go watch a comedian. Laughter is actually, it provides you with lots of energy and good, does good things for your mind, body, and soul, right? So those are the things that I like to practice when it's really busy and demanding.
That's good. That's good. Still enjoying Michael Franks?
Still enjoying Michael Franks.
Great taste. Great taste. What is the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
And I think I said this earlier. I was absolutely mortified to speak publicly, prior to, my 35th birthday. I just wouldn't do it. I used to run away from the experiences, the opportunities to do it because I just didn't want to. But I spent the last decade or so of my life focused on being much better at it. And so preparation goes back to the point I made earlier. And comedy, the one thing that I use I found something that works for me. So people have to find what works for them. Once I get you to laugh, if I can get the audience to laugh, I got you. The rest of it, I own you all. So you're with me now. And now you're on my terms as the rest of the speech goes. So I use comedy as a way to get comfortable in what I'm going to say and do. And I talk in first and third person a lot of times just to make it more fun for the audience, more interactive.
Hmm.
So those are the things that help make it a calming situation for me. But the first 30 years of my life wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And my last question, second to last question, what do you hope your leadership legacy will be?
Great question. I thought about this a lot, and I came up with this, and I said, if there was something that I wanted people to really remember about me, from the Daryl Graham in my 20s and 30s to the Daryl Graham in his now 40s, now 50s, that I helped create opportunities for others to achieve their fullest potential and open doors for many that might have remained closed.
Yeah. Wow. You've done that, I'm sure, beyond what you envisioned years ago or when you were given this opportunity. I can only imagine what it looks like 5, 10 years or now, because those people that you have poured into and developed and created environments for them to succeed, eliminating barriers, they then pour into others. And so you started that process. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate legacy that will unfold, continue to unfold, I should say. My last question, from entry level to the C suite, we believe every career journey leaves clues for those who follow. What final piece of advice would you offer someone seeking to build a career marked by purpose? You mentioned that. You mentioned impact and excellence. Marked by purpose, impact, and excellence.
Excellence is a great word, Dr. Wilson. I'm glad you put that into to the question. I think about this a lot when I think about the things that I've seen in my career, and talking to you and many others about what their career journey looks like. And I've come up with this, and I hope folks, it'll resonate with folks. Never confuse success with significance. Success is often measured by titles, promotions, and accomplishments, right? Significance is measured by the lives you impact and the opportunities you create for others. Build your career on purpose, not position. Continue learning, remain humble, invest in relationships, and remember that leadership is ultimately about service. It's about how you can help others. If you focus on creating value for others and leave every organization, every community and person better than you found them, excellence and impact will follow.
Wow, I couldn't have ended on a better note. Dr. Daryl Graham, thank you for today. I know not just one, many people that have an opportunity to hear this exchange today will grow in ways that they probably had not considered or thought of things that they had not thought of. So I thank you for your time. I know you have a very busy schedule, but hopefully I've said this to you in the past. I will continue to say this. Thank you. And let me add this piece. I'm very intentional about people asking me, are you going to invite people to kind of apply or submit to becoming a guest on the podcast? And I'm not really there yet. I know I've been very blessed and fortunate. I have a very rich portfolio. And with my focus being on normalizing executive presence, because I know how it's impacted my life and benefited my professional life in particular, that because of that, I have a Rolodex filled with those individuals. And I want to tap into those individuals first before I'd say, hey, if you'd like to come on the show, you can do that. You've certainly been one of those individuals who have poured into my professional development and just extending me opportunities, but allowing me to enter spaces where I can then make that impact and to also serve. So I thank you. And in particular, just want to thank you for always exemplifying what executive presence is and making it a daily practice. That's just so important. We can preach and teach on these things all day, but it resonates and it connects with people more when we live and breathe it. So I thank you for always doing that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. It is truly an honor to be with you as always. And thank you for the invitation to be on this wonderful podcast. I'm sure that many people will be knocking down the door to get to this podcast by the time you get all the fantastic guests that you have on your Rolodex to be here. I appreciate and I'm honored that you would consider me to be here and appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you as you continue to build.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Viewers, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of From Entry Level to C-Suite. I'm Dr. Wendy Wilson, encouraging you to continue to normalize executive presence from entry level all the way to the C-Suite. I look forward to seeing you next time.